Thursday, August 18th. If you ask me, the absolute biggest mistake you could make while watching the latest developments unfold is assuming that a simple change of address is merely about real estate. Most viewers are looking at Willow moving into the gatehouse and seeing a desperate, exhausted mother seeking a safe haven. They see a simple domestic shift designed to provide stability for her children. But I am looking at this situation and seeing something entirely different. I am seeing the opening salvo of a massive multi-front power struggle that is about to tear through the very fabric of these interconnected families. This is not about finding a quiet place to sleep. This is the absolute weaponization of geography. When you place a highly controversial figure directly inside the perimeter of her greatest rival's territory, you are not just setting up a living arrangement. You are setting the stage for an absolute explosion. To fully understand the magnitude of what is happening right now, we have to pull back and look at the entire board. We have Willow setting up camp right under the nose of a furious Brooklyn. We have Michael quietly calculating how to turn his sister's corporate crisis into a personal windfall. We have Carly operating completely in the shadows, pulling strings with a newly arrived executive to manipulate her own daughter's career path. And quietly in the background, we have Serena stepping up to claim her power, while Lucas and Joe find solace in each other. My central thesis here is simple. No one in this town is standing still. Every single character is currently using a facade of domestic necessity or professional duty to mask a ruthless, calculated land grab for power, influence, and ultimate control. Let us start with the epicenter of this impending earthquake. Willow and her highly calculated encounters with Chase. When Willow interacts with Chase, it is an absolute masterclass in narrative control. She is not simply recounting the events that led her to move into the gatehouse. She is meticulously curating the fact. She knows exactly how to present herself to Chase to elicit his deepest protective instinct. She smooths over the rough edges of her own questionable choices, deliberately highlighting her vulnerability and her unwavering devotion to Wiley and Amelia. She wants Chase to see her as the wronged party, the embattled mother who just needs a noble champion. By positioning herself in the gatehouse, she is ensuring that Chase remains securely in her orbit, physically and emotionally proximate. She is spinning a narrative that paints her in the most sympathetic light possible, effectively using Chase's inherent nobility as a shield against the incoming attacks she knows are inevitable. And those attacks are absolutely coming, because Brooklyn is practically vibrating with sheer fury. For Brooklyn, seeing Willow move into the gatehouse is not a minor inconvenience or a temporary annoyance. It is a full-blown invasion of her sovereign territory. Brooklyn views that estate as her absolute domain, the physical manifestation of her family's legacy. Having Willow, the woman who has consistently been a massive thorn in her side and a direct threat to her marriage, cross those gates is an undeniable act of war. Brooklyn understands better than anyone that proximity is power. If Willow is living on the property, she has access. She has the ability to run into Chase casually, to embed herself in the daily rhythms of the family, and to slowly, methodically erode Brooklyn's sense of security. Brooklyn is not just mad about an unwanted house guest, she is terrified of a Trojan horse. This is where it gets interesting, guys. Think about the deep, turbulent history of that specific estate. It has never just been a home. It has always been a sprawling battlefield where the residents use the hallways, the gardens, and the living rooms to wage intense psychological warfare. We have seen decades of family members using their physical presence on the property to eavesdrop on private conversations, to intercept important guests, and to assert their dominance over one another. Brooklyn knows this vicious playbook inside and out because she literally helped write half of it. She knows that whoever controls the narrative inside those iron gates ultimately controls the family's future. By allowing Willow to establish a permanent beachhead at the gatehouse, the family is essentially inviting the enemy inside the wire. Brooklyn's absolute desperation to remove Willow is rooted in a deep historical understanding of how incredibly dangerous a resident with a hidden agenda can truly be. So, naturally, Brooklyn attempts to bring out the heavy artillery. She goes straight to Tracy, fully expecting the formidable family matriarch to immediately evict the interloper and restore order. But Tracy delivers a stunning, game-changing reversal, flatly refusing to kick Willow off the property. Why? Because of Wiley and Amelia. Tracy anchors her shocking decision entirely on the bloodline, declaring that those children belong to the family and therefore have an undeniable right to be on the property. On the surface, this looks like a rare, touching moment of sentimental, grandmotherly protection from the usually ruthless Tracy. She is using the children as an impenetrable emotional shield, effectively neutralizing Brooklyn's demand. It is a brilliant tactical maneuver because Brooklyn cannot argue against the well-being and housing of those children without looking entirely heartless and petty. But we all know Tracy much better than that. Tracy does not make sweeping decisions purely out of the goodness of her heart. If you ask me, Tracy is keeping Willow on the property because she operates by the ancient, incredibly effective adage of keeping your friends close and your enemies much, much closer. By allowing Willow to stay at the gatehouse, Tracy is actively containing the threat. She can meticulously monitor who comes and goes. She can carefully observe Willow's daily interactions with Chase. And she can maintain a level of intense surveillance that would be utterly impossible if Willow lived across town. Tracy is effectively turning the gatehouse into a beautifully manicured, gilded cage. She is forcing Brooklyn to deal with her own deep-seated insecurities and manage her own marriage, rather than simply hitting the eject button on the problem. Tracy is testing Brooklyn, forcing her to evolve from a reactive, emotional schemer into a strategic, cold-blooded defender of her own life. Of course, Brooklyn is not going to just accept this matriarchal ruling, roll over, and politely wave to Willow across the expansive lawn. Since she cannot force a formal eviction through Tracy or Michael, Brooklyn is going to have to pivot to relentless psychological warfare. I fully expect her to launch a covert, highly sophisticated campaign designed to make Willow so incredibly uncomfortable and isolated that she chooses to pack her bags and leave voluntarily. Brooklyn will likely orchestrate subtle situations that constantly highlight Willow's outsider status, methodically undermining her confidence and her perceived safety on the ground. The gatehouse is going to become the focal point of a massive unspoken war of attrition. Brooklyn will not rest until the threat is completely neutralized, and Willow is far too stubborn and entrenched to retreat without a massive fight. The tension on that estate is going to be thick enough to cut with a knife. Meanwhile, stepping away from the territorial warfare at the gatehouse, we have another fascinating, deeply layered manipulation unfolding with Michael. Jocelyn approaches him seeking his seasoned advice on finding a suitable, highly competent CEO to run Jasper's massive company. Most brothers would simply offer a list of reputable corporate headhunters or some solid, supportive business advice. But Michael is not most brothers. Michael looks at his sister's desperate need for corporate leadership and immediately sees a golden, incredibly lucrative opportunity for a trade. He is currently hoping to pull off a major, highly secretive transaction, and I truly believe he views Jocelyn's CEO vacancy as the absolute perfect bargaining chip. He is not just going to hand over a simple solution. He is going to ruthlessly leverage his sister's crisis to secure a massive advantage for his own hidden agenda. Let us anchor this thought with a hard look at Michael's extensive track record. Whenever Michael gets involved in corporate restructuring, whether it involves his family's legacy company or his own independent media ventures, he always, without fail, ensures that the outcome heavily favors his own strategic positioning and financial bottom line. He is an absolute master at masking deep self-interest as genuine familial support. When he offers to help Jocelyn navigate this corporate minefield, he is simultaneously calculating exactly how the new CEO of Jasper's company can perfectly align with his own financial and political goals. Michael is playing three-dimensional corporate chess, recognizing that controlling the leadership of that specific company gives him a massive, unprecedented shadow influence over an entirely different sector of the town's economy. But Michael is certainly not the only one trying to secretly steer Jocelyn's future. We absolutely have to talk about Carly and her incredibly subtle, highly manipulative use of Hudson. Carly is absolutely desperate to pull Jocelyn away from the incredibly dangerous, unpredictable world of international espionage. She wants her daughter safe, secure, and sitting comfortably behind a mahogany corporate desk. Hudson, the mysterious new executive, looks at Jocelyn and highly doubts she will ever accept the CEO position herself, seeing her as far too rebellious, stubborn, and untamed for the stuffy boardroom. But Carly sees Hudson not as an obstacle or a skeptic, but as the perfect, unwitting instrument. Carly is quietly, relentlessly pushing Hudson to use his undeniable charm, his slick powers of persuasion, and whatever tactical maneuvers he possesses to completely change Jocelyn's mind. If you ask me, this is Carly at her absolute most dangerous, most brilliant, and most terrifying. She knows perfectly well that if she pushes Jocelyn directly, Jocelyn will immediately dig in her heels, rebel against her mother's control, and run straight back into the line of fire. So, Carly completely removes her own fingerprints from the psychological operation. She unleashes Hudson on her daughter, carefully orchestrating a scenario where Jocelyn might actually be seduced by the power, the challenge, and the prestige of the CEO role, without ever once realizing her mother designed the entire elaborate trap. Carly is entirely willing to use a virtual stranger to completely manipulate her daughter's life trajectory because she firmly believes the end justifies it. If Hudson succeeds, Jocelyn steps into a massive power role, completely oblivious to the fact that she was seamlessly maneuvered into the chair by maternal engineering. Now, I have to pause for a second and play devil's advocate with my own theory. Am I giving these characters too much credit? Let me look at the other side of the coin for a moment. Perhaps Willow really is just exhausted, deeply traumatized, and desperately seeking a quiet, safe place for Wiley and Amelia. Maybe her intense conversations with Chase are not calculated Machiavellian spin, but the genuine, messy, emotional overflow of a woman whose life is rapidly falling apart. Perhaps she really does not realize how deeply her physical presence at the gatehouse triggers Brooklyn's deepest insecurities. But when I look at the long history of how Willow navigates intense conflict, how she always manages to perfectly position herself as the innocent moral center while leaving a massive trail of chaos in her wake, I just cannot buy the innocent victim routine. The framing is far too perfect. The proximity to Chase far too convenient. The calculation is absolutely there, even if she hides it perfectly behind a veil of tears. Adding an entirely unpredictable, highly volatile variable to this massive powder keg is Serena. The whispers going around are that Serena is becoming increasingly bossy, stepping into her power, and preparing to mount a serious, uncompromising counterattack. The massive looming question is, who exactly is she aiming at? Serena is not someone who will sit quietly in the corner while others dictate the terms of her life or her family's storied legacy. If she targets Michael, she could completely derail his secret transaction and throw the entire corporate landscape into absolute chaos. But if her crosshairs are locked onto Tracy or Lucy, we are looking at a fundamental, earth-shattering shakeup in the beauty industry and the deception boardroom. Serena has the legacy, the fire, and the absolute right to demand a seat at the head of the table, and her sudden uprising is going to force everyone else to constantly watch their back. Amidst all this cutthroat corporate maneuvering, vicious territorial warfare, and deep family manipulation, there is one storyline that provides a desperately needed emotional grounding: the deepening. Beautiful connection between Lucas and Joe. While everyone else in town is busy sharpening their knives and plotting their next betrayal, these two are slowly, carefully building a genuine romantic. I truly think this relationship is going to become one of the most vital, stabilizing elements on the entire canvas. As the chaos around them escalates to dangerous new heights, their budding romance offers a quiet refuge, a poignant reminder of actual human connection in a town utterly obsessed with leverage and power. Their growing closeness is not just a sweet side plot, it is the emotional anchor that keeps the narrative from spinning entirely into cold, calculated darkness. So, when we step back and look at the entire sprawling canvas, the picture is breathtakingly complex and incredibly dangerous. We have Michael hunting for a highly lucrative trade, Carly playing the ultimate puppet master with Hudson to secure Jocelyn's future, Serena preparing to completely burn down the boardroom, and Lucas and Joe finding unexpected love in the crossfire. But at the dead center of it all is that seemingly quiet gatehouse. Willow thinks she has found a peaceful sanctuary, but she has actually walked right into ground zero. With Brooklyn plotting her ruthless revenge, Tracy standing guard over the children with hidden motives, Serena preparing to strike, and Michael quietly calculating his next move, that small piece of real estate is about to become the most dangerous place in town. If you ask me, the battle lines have only just been drawn, and the true war for power, influence, and survival is only just beginning.
Goodbye. Please like, subscribe, and comment on the GH Spoilers Daily channel.